For most of human history, wolves were not seen as friendly animals. They were feared. If you had been alive 30,000 years ago, hearing a pack of wolves howling outside your camp at night would have been terrifying. Humans were vulnerable. We were slower than many predators, lacked claws and fangs, and lived in a world filled with dangers. Wolves, on the other hand, were extraordinary hunters. They moved in coordinated packs, possessed incredible endurance, and could detect scents from remarkable distances. Their vision and hearing gave them major advantages, especially after sunset. To ancient humans, wolves represented one of the greatest threats in the wilderness. Yet something remarkable happened. Out of all the animals humans encountered throughout prehistory, wolves eventually became our closest companions. Not horses, not cattle, not primates. Wolves. Today, dogs are everywhere. There are hundreds of millions of them living alongside people across the globe. They guard homes, assist police forces, guide the blind, rescue disaster victims, herd livestock, detect explosives, and spend their evenings curled up on living room floors. But dogs were never intentionally invented. No group of ancient humans gathered around a fire and decided to create a loyal companion animal. The origin of dogs was far less planned. In fact, evidence suggests that wolves may have started the domestication process themselves long before humans understood what was happening. To understand this incredible transformation, we need to travel back to the Ice Age. Between roughly 20,000 and 40,000 years ago, humans survived as hunter-gatherers. Small groups traveled constantly across vast landscapes in search of food. Life was difficult and uncertain. Successful hunts were never guaranteed. Winters were deadly. Disease, injuries, and starvation were constant threats. A simple broken bone could become a death sentence. And beyond the warmth of every campfire, wolves waited. Ancient human camps unintentionally created opportunities for nearby predators. Even during difficult times, people left behind scraps of meat, discarded bones, skins, and partially eaten carcasses. To a hungry wolf, these leftovers represented an easy meal. Human camps became moving sources of food. At first, wolves likely approached with extreme caution. The boldest individuals ventured closer. The most aggressive wolves were often driven away or killed. The most fearful stayed distant and missed the opportunity entirely. But among those wolf populations, some individuals possessed different personalities. A few wolves were naturally less fearful. Some were more curious. Others were calmer around humans. Modern genetic research suggests that temperament varies naturally within animal populations. Certain wolves may simply have been born with traits that allowed them to tolerate human presence more easily than others. Those differences mattered. Instead of risking injury hunting dangerous prey, these calmer wolves could obtain food by remaining near human settlements and scavenging leftovers. Over many generations, this created a powerful evolutionary advantage. The wolves that were less aggressive gained more access to food. The wolves that tolerated humans survived more successfully. Meanwhile, the most hostile individuals continued facing greater risks and fewer rewards. Slowly, generation after generation, natural selection began favoring wolves with friendlier personalities. This process was incredibly gradual. No one noticed it happening. Yet evolution was quietly reshaping entire populations. The calmer wolves remained closer to people. The aggressive wolves disappeared from those environments. And eventually, something even more fascinating occurred. The wolves did not just change behaviorally. They began changing physically as well. At first glance, that might sound unbelievable, but scientists have actually witnessed similar transformations in modern times. In 1959, Soviet geneticist Dmitry Belayev launched a groundbreaking experiment in Siberia. He wanted to discover how domestication changes animals. His method was surprisingly simple. Each generation, he selected only the tamest foxes to reproduce. He did not train them. He did not reward them with special treatment. He simply chose the least aggressive foxes and allowed them to breed. Then he repeated the process again and again. The results were extraordinary. Within only a few decades, the foxes began behaving differently. They became friendly toward humans. They wagged their tails. They sought attention. They licked hands and followed caretakers around. They started acting remarkably similar to dogs. But behavior was only part of the story. The fox's physical appearance changed as well. Their ears became floppy. Their faces became softer. Their snouts shortened. White patches appeared in their fur. Some developed curled tails. All of these changes emerged without directly selecting for appearance. Scientists later noticed that many domesticated animals share similar characteristics. Across different species, tameness often produces unexpected physical changes. Smaller jaws, rounder faces, patchy coloring, floppy ears, curled tails. It appears that reducing aggression can trigger a whole collection of biological changes known as the domestication syndrome. Something very similar may have happened to ancient wolves. Long before humans intentionally bred dogs, early wolf populations living near camps may have already begun looking slightly different from their fully wild relatives. Imagine standing beside an Ice Age campfire and spotting wolves nearby. Not quite as large, not quite as intimidating, not quite as aggressive, still wild, but no longer entirely the same. These animals were becoming something new, and perhaps most importantly, this process probably did not happen in a single place. Humans and wolves occupied enormous territories across Europe, Asia, and beyond. Similar relationships may have developed independently in multiple regions at different times. For thousands of years, humans likely watched these changes unfold without realizing they were witnessing one of the most important evolutionary partnerships in history, a partnership that would eventually reshape both species forever. As these early wolf populations spent more time near human camps, something unexpected began to happen. Both species started benefiting from each other's presence. At first, the relationship may have been nothing more than tolerance. Wolves gained access to food scraps, while humans simply accepted their presence on the edges of camp. But over time, that arrangement slowly evolved into something much more valuable. Wolves possess senses that far exceed human abilities. Their hearing is incredibly sensitive. They can detect distant sounds long before humans notice anything unusual. Their sense of smell is even more remarkable, capable of identifying predators, prey, and strangers from enormous distances. For ancient humans living in dangerous environments, those abilities were priceless. A wolf lingering near camp could act as an early warning system. If a bear approached during the night, the wolves would likely react first. If rival groups moved through the area, the wolves could detect them before the humans did. If prey animals were nearby, wolves often noticed signs that people might otherwise miss. Without realizing it, humans had begun forming a partnership with one of nature's most efficient hunters, and the benefits worked both ways. Humans provided a steady source of food. Campfires offered warmth. Large groups of people created protection against other predators. For wolves that could tolerate human company, life became easier. As a result, the connection between the two species continued growing stronger, generation after generation. Wolves became more comfortable around humans, while humans became increasingly accustomed to their presence. What started as simple scavenging was slowly transforming into cooperation. This is one reason dogs are considered the first domesticated animal in human history. They were domesticated long before sheep, long before goats, long before cattle. In fact, dogs appear to have joined human societies thousands of years before the invention of agriculture itself. That fact is extraordinary. When people think about domestication, they often imagine farmers raising animals in villages. But the story of dogs began much earlier, during a time when humans still lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers. The friendship between humans and dogs predates cities, writing systems, metal tools, and organized civilization. It reaches back into the distant Ice Age. As human societies eventually changed, dogs changed alongside them. Around 12,000 years ago, agriculture began spreading across various parts of the world. Humans started cultivating crops and settling in permanent communities. This new lifestyle introduced a completely different diet. Instead of relying almost entirely on meat, humans began consuming larger amounts of grains and starchy plants. Remarkably, dogs adapted to these changes as well. Modern genetic studies have revealed that dogs possess a much greater ability to digest starch than wolves. Wolves remain primarily adapted for a meat-heavy diet. Dogs, however, evolved genetic changes that help them process foods commonly found around human settlements. In other words, as human diets changed, dog biology changed too. The two species were evolving together. This process is sometimes called coevolution, rather than one species changing independently. Both species influence each other's development over long periods of time. Humans shaped dogs. Dogs shaped humans. For thousands of generations, this relationship became deeper and more complex. Dogs likely improved hunting success in many ancient communities. A skilled dog could help track wounded animals over long distances. It could detect prey hidden in dense vegetation. It could help corner animals during hunts. Some researchers believe that human groups with dogs may have enjoyed significant survival advantages compared to groups without them. Even small improvements in hunting efficiency could mean the difference between life and death during harsh winters. Food shortages were common in prehistoric times. Every successful hunt mattered. If dogs consistently helped people locate and capture more food, then communities with canine companions would naturally have greater chances of survival. Over centuries and millennia, those advantages could become enormous. Some anthropologists have even suggested that dogs may have helped humans expand into new environments. As people migrated across frozen landscapes, forests, grasslands, and mountain regions, dogs accompanied them. Together, they explored territories that neither species would have conquered quite as effectively alone. Dogs were not merely following humans. They were active partners in humanity's expansion across the planet. But the relationship was evolving in another fascinating way as well. The bond was becoming emotional. What began as a practical arrangement gradually transformed into something much deeper. Scientists studying human-animal relationships have discovered remarkable biological evidence of this connection. When humans and dogs interact positively, both species experience changes inside their brains. One of the most important chemicals involved is oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin plays a major role in relationships between parents and children, close friends, and romantic partners. When a dog gazes into a human's eyes, oxytocin levels rise in both the dog and the person. The interaction creates a biological feedback loop that strengthens emotional attachment. What's especially interesting is that wolves generally do not show the same response toward humans. Dogs do. Somewhere during thousands of years of domestication, dogs evolved an extraordinary ability to connect emotionally with human beings. They learned how to communicate with us in ways that wolves never did, and humans became highly responsive to those signals. A dog's gaze, posture, facial expressions, and vocalizations all trigger emotional reactions in people. This was not an accident. Evolution favored dogs that could successfully communicate with humans. Likewise, humans often preferred dogs that appeared friendly, expressive, and cooperative. Over time, these preferences influenced which dogs survived and reproduced. The partnership was no longer based solely on survival. A transformation that had begun with scraps beside a campfire was steadily becoming one of the most successful evolutionary stories the world had ever seen.